So, in today's video, we're going to be ranking Ten Hag summer transfer targets and Manchester United summer transfer targets. And as you can see on my screen, there is a tier list. There's a load of players down below here. Now, I first made this tier list 3 months ago, so there's a category called Already Gone with Julian Alvarez, Erling Haaland, and Kamara in who already gone, and then Tchouaméni, basically Real Madrid bound, and Ousmane Dembele, I think basically Chelsea bound. So they're in the Already Gone section if you're wondering why that's there. And then I've added some more people into that tier list because we've been linked with loads and loads and loads of people. So we're going to be ranking Erik ten Hag's transfer targets and Man United's transfer targets. Now, a lot of these players on this tier list are not going to come to United because there's like 30 players on the tier list or something. We're not going to sign 30 players. I think we'll sign 5. If you want to see me do a second tier list video where I'm going to rank them based on how likely I think they are to come, then smash that like button. This is just my opinions on them. Would they be a good signing? Would they be a bad signing? Would they be overpriced? Like, what's my thoughts on them as an actual signing? But I could do a video next week saying this is likely to happen, this is not likely to happen, this will never happen, this could happen, it's a 50-50. Let me know if you want to see that in a part 2. But we are going to pop into the tier list. I am going to explain the tier list to you as well. So we got top drawer. I just think it will be a brilliant signing up. Get it in there, please. Ooh, that sounds a bit weird. Good business. I just think it will be good business. No one's super expensive, but I just think, this could be good business. Risky is a risk. Risky doesn't mean it's a bad signing. Risky means it's a risk, like maybe because it's a bit of money. Is it going to pay off? I don't know that much about the player. Risky doesn't necessarily mean bad, but it is a risk. It could be a flop. It could be like, wow. Arsenal took a lot of risky signings last summer and they worked out well. I just don't really want them. Just please do not. And cost too much. Players and cost too much. Players, I'd love at United, but when we're in a rebuild, you need to bring in 5-6 players. We can't. If we came second last year, you're looking at £200 million signings to get you to first. When Liverpool, Liverpool's first few seasons under Klopp, it's 4, 5, 6 cheap players coming in. And then, to get to the title that was Van Dijk and Alisson that were quite expensive signings. We're at the beginning of a rebuild. We can't be doing expensive signings. We need to do 4 or 5 good signings. And then if we're coming second, if we can push for the league in 2 seasons' time, then you go for your Kane to your right. So it costs too much. It's just players that I think cost too much. Guys, make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe down below. And let's get into the tier list. So who is the first player in the tier list? That is Julian Alvarez. So we're going to have to put him in Already Gone because that is Julian Alvarez. We've also got 2 Spencers, so I'll just put you at the end there. The first player is Calvert-Lewin, and that's just no. Like, Calvert-Lewin is going in just no. He's got injury problems. He's English, so he's going to be overrated, overpriced. He's not that good. He's not. He really is not that good. I would rather have him over Rashford up front. I was about to say I'll stick Rashford up on. I'd rather have Martial for another season than Calvert-Lewin. He's just average. He's injury prone. I just don't want him. Ivan Toney, I'm going to put in meh. I think Ivan Toney is a better player than Mr. DCL. All right, and to be fair, I think Ivan Toney could be in risky. I actually think he's a decent player, to be fair. And when there's most of the strikers are overpriced, I wouldn't be annoyed if we got Ivan Toney as long as we spent 30 million or less on him. But because he's English, because he's in the Premier, he'd be 50 million. So it's a bit of a mess signing, but I actually think he's a weirdly underrated player. I do quite like Ivan Toney. If he was like 20 million, I'd put it in good business. But I'm going to put him in there because I just know that if we want him, it's going to be like 50 million, and he ain't worth anywhere near 50 million. Tammy Abraham, again, I'd put him risky. Very good in the Serie A, but so was Lukaku. It's a very different style of play. Again, he would be 60, 70 million. I think he's a good player, but again, he don't offer that much on top other than goals. And, that's what Ten Hag, to be fair, can do with a striker. All you need to do is score. And, people say the same about Ronaldo, but he's not a player that I look at and go, that's what we need. And we do need a striker, but just seeing how good Ronaldo is for Portugal again, that's why I don't want to spend like 60, 70 million on Darwin Núñez when Ronaldo's that good for Portugal, that Ronaldo's going to be our main striker for another year. All we need is a backup striker for a year, and then next summer you get a main striker. And again, Tammy Abraham, I think, would be risky because, he was okay for Chelsea. He wasn't brilliant. But I just think with the price as well, we'd be risky. Rafinha, honestly, people are going to disagree with me on this, but I think meh. I think if Leeds had gone down, I would have put Rafinha in good business because he'd be like 20 million. Again, I actually think he's quite overrated, and this is where people will disagree with me. He's a good player, and we do need a right winger. So maybe I'll put him in risky. You know, I'll put him in risky. But again, it's not a player that stands out to me like this is a 10-hour player, this is the player we need. It's just a very obvious player. He plays in the Premier League, he plays right wing, and he gets goals and assists. And United have brought so many obvious players, and they've come to us and flopped, that I'm kind of over going for the obvious players. Oh, he's in the Premier, he's got goals and assists. Oh, people talk about him. I want us to go for some under-the-radar signings. Again, I think it's risky. Tielemans, I mean, 25 million, would you put it in good business? I don't think he's had a very good campaign this season, Tielemans. He doesn't actually run that much. People are calling Pogba Jogpa, but Tielemans runs and presses less than him. I don't think he's a 10-hour kind of player. So I put Tielemans in risky again. People would disagree, but I just think he's a risky player. Same with Ruben Neves. I put him in risky. Why? Because quoted at 50 million. Now, this time last year, I really wanted Neves. I think he's an Ollie player. I don't see him as a 10-hour player. Him and Bruno give the ball away a lot. 10-hour's about keeping possession. Again, as well, if we get De Jong, I think a Lamar or a Sangare would complement De Jong a lot better than a Neves as well. I don't think he's that type of player. Gives the ball away a lot. A little bit overrated. Not worth 50 million. He's a decent player. Look, if we get Neves, I've got no issue with it. But I actually do think it's a bit of a risk. And I think for the price, there's better midfielders out there. I used to want Neves, but when I look at the way Neves plays and how he gives the ball away a lot, Neves and Bruno in the same squad, for me, it is a risk. Now, I think this would be good business with a Basuma. I think Basuma is way more suited to 10-hour style of play. He's got 1 year left on his contract, so he would be about £30 million. You could put him in risky because I think he has some kind of court case surrounding him, and we don't want a Mason Greenwood too. But I don't know what's going on with that. I haven't actually read up about it. I don't care. I would put Basuma in good business. I would rather have Basuma than Neves and Tielemans because I'm trying to think of how Ten Hag would play. I'm trying to think how Ten Hag would play and what Ten Hag would do. For me, I think Basuma, the way Brighton play, he presses, he offers that as well. Declan Rice would be a top draw signing, like he would, but fuck me, he's going in cost too much. Again, we can't look. If we'd have come second last year and we were 4 points behind Man City, you put all your money on a player like Declan Rice. But a rebuild is getting back in the top four. And to get back in the top four, we need 2 midfielders, a fullback, and another attacker for me, at least 4 players. If we'd come second and we had a really good base of the squad and we were 2 signings away from a title, then you go for Kane and Rice. But again, Harry Kane's a top draw player. But again, he's got to go and cost too much. Calvin Phillips, 60 million, you could put him in cost too much because that is stupid. I'm going to put Calvin Phillips in risky, okay, because of his price, because the fact he doesn't want to come to United. But I think, again, he would suit Ten Hag's style of play. But I think he's a bit overrated because he's English and is at Leeds and he's Premier League proven. I think he's an obvious signing. And obvious signings I put him risky. Jack Grealish was an obvious signing. He's not been worth 100 million. He's been decent at City, not worth 100 million. So I just put him in risky. I do think he would suit Ten Hag's style of play, but I do just think he's a little bit overrated. Again, Milinkovic-Savic goes in risky. I don't think there's any chance of this happening. He's always linked to United. He's a little bit overrated. I don't think he's what we need for the dressing room. Now, I don't know a lot about Milinkovic-Savic. I don't know what his personnel is like. But in the dressing room, I think you want players that sole focus is being at United winning titles and not money and not moves and not agent drama. And for me, I think United need to be signing players when Man United to step up in their career. Well, Man United is a step up from Lazio, but I think you need maybe one big statement signing like a Frenkie de Jong. And every other bit of business that we should do, I think, should be a player where they're coming to United because they step up in their career and they want to prove a point. Like Basuma, United's a bigger club than Brighton. It's a step up. He wants to prove a point because he's young. Sangare, he wants to prove a point because he's young. If you look at all the Liverpool signings, Robertson came in from Hull, Matip came in from Schalke, Van Dijk was their big signer, but he came in from Southampton, say with Mane, Salah came from Roma, Firmino came from Hoffenheim, Fabinho came from Monaco. They all came from decent clubs. They were all young, they all had potential, but Liverpool was their big move in their career and, this is the big league. This is where I could prove myself as a top player. And for me, those are the kind of players we should be going for. Rudiger's already gone, to be fair. I've got to put him in already gone. Timber, I think, would be good business. I could put Timber in top drawer, but he's only 20. He is only 20. At the end of the day, I think it's really good business because he plays under Erik ten Hag. I spoke to a lot of Ajax fans and they're like Timber's amazing. Timber's been their best player. He's 20. He's quick, he's versatile, he can fill in at right back if we need, he plays centre back, he knows how to play Ten Hag style of play. He's not going to be more than £40 million. I think that is good business for Jurrien Timber. And even if he's crap, I still think you could get a bit of money back from him as well because of his age. Pau Torres, and I'm being honest, I put Pau Torres in meh. But again, is he better than Lindelof Maguire? Probably yes. So I put him in risky. But again, he's been quoted at £50 million. I don't want to be spending more than £35 million on a centre-back when before we get centre-back, I think we need 2 midfielders before anything. I just think, again, I don't mind spending 60+ million on a midfielder, but all the other positions for me, I want to be under 50 million for Man United because, again, it's a rebuild. It's about 5-6 positions. I think we'll sign 5 players rather than 3 players. I'll be disappointed if we signed Pau Torres, De Jong and NUNEZ because that's 3 players. I want to be seeing maybe a De Jong, maybe another midfielder, maybe a fullback, maybe a centre-back like Timber and maybe a striker, but cheaper options. And I just think, again, I put him in risky. For me, I'm not a big fan of Darwin Núñez, but I think to put him in meh, I think that would be unfair. I think, again, risky. I wouldn't spend more than £50 million on Darwin Núñez, especially because he'll just be on the bench for Ronaldo for most of the season. I just think it's a very Glazer signing, very obvious signing, very Woodward signing. He scored a lot of goals. People are talking about him. Let's chuck 60 million on him. But when you do your research on Darwin Núñez, yes, he's a brilliant finisher, but what else is he going to add? And also, Ronaldo's going to play the majority of games. So, and he can't fill on the wing or anything, Why don't we actually just get a backup striker or bring Martial back for a season or a cheaper striker, and then maybe next season you go for that big striker because he's been quoted at 70+ million and he's just not worth that. He really is a good player. He's 22. He can be moulded into a great player. That's why I put him in risky because he really could be a good player. He could, but I just don't think he's all that. I really don't. Anthony, I guess you could put in good business. Like, we do need a right winger, but again, I think 2 midfielders, fullback, centre-back, striker is priority. So, do you put Anthony in risky? I know he's playing under Erik ten Hag, so I don't think it's risky. I wouldn't pay more than 50 million for him. I'll put it in good business because, to be fair, if someone said you buy Anthony and you don't buy a striker, if I had a choice of buying Anthony and Núñez, I'd buy Anthony, even though he's not a striker, and then he'll just play striker when Ronaldo's can't play or Bruno plays false nine. Maybe not Bruno at false nine again, but you get what I mean. Again, with Danjuma, I'd be pretty happy with Danjuma, to be fair. But he's being quoted. I would put him in good business, but he's being quoted at 70 million. I think it's risky as well. I think he's a good player. But I don't know enough about him. He doesn't scream 10 Hag vibes, so I put him in risky. Again, Elise, I put him risky. I really like Elise, to be fair, and I'd actually love him at United. If you can get less than £30 million, I think you could put Elise in good business because he's young. I think you could put Elise in good business because he is really young, but he's just not played enough minutes for me to put him in good business. I think I'll put him in risky because he might not hit his potential, but I'd be very happy with Elise. Isaac's going to cost too much. He's being quoted at 70-80 million pounds. Now, I do quite like Isaac. He's a good player. I love how he was going to go to Arsenal, he was going to go to Arsenal with the number plate in London. Very, very good striker. But again, for me, I've always said this, and I'm going to keep saying this. I'm not interested in spending 70+ million on a striker. I want a 40 million or less striker because Ronaldo is still at the top of his game. You want Ronaldo to play once a week, okay? And then those cup games, those Europa League games, you give them to other people. We're not in the Champions League. Ronaldo's here for the Premier League games. Then I want the striker to play the other games. Now, Martial doesn't want to stay, so you got to get rid of Martial. But for me, I would rather us buy 2 midfielders, a fullback, a centre-back, and a right winger. And then next season, you go for that striker role. And then you go for maybe that goalkeeper because maybe De Gea can't play Ten Hag's way. So for me, I just don't really want to spend ridiculous money on a striker. Now, to be fair, I do think he is a good player, but I just think he's being quoted at stupid money. Richarlison, honestly, I put him in just no, but I'm going to put him in meh. He is better than Calvert-Lewin, but I just wouldn't be that excited by Richarlison. Nkunku, the stat padder, we all love a stat padder at United. I would put him in good business. He would be about £60 million. His stats are crazy. He played at RB Leipzig, which is a high-pressing system, so he can play Ten Hag's way. He's also versatile. Now, Ten Hag loves versatility. He's 24. He can play attacking midfield. He can play right mid. He can play left mid. He can play as a second striker. And Nkunku is the attacker I would buy, not Darwin Núñez. And As I said, Ronaldo plays every game in the Prem. When you want to rest Ronaldo, and Nkunku just plays striker in the Europa League games and the FA Cup games, bish, bash, bosh. That's what you do. But when you can also play Ronaldo and Nkunku, stick Nkunku on the right. I know he's not a right winger. He can play on the right. Stick Nkunku at cam, stick Nkunku at the left. He can play in the same team as Ronaldo because Ten Hag plays a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3. Wingers, one striker. If you play Darwin Núñez and Ronaldo, you need two strikers. And Darwin Núñez and Ronaldo, they won't complement each other because they're both finishers, they're not like a Firmino or like a passy striker. So for me, I think Nkunku would be good business. Hedera, I don't think he's the best player in the world, Hedera. I do think we need a CDM. I don't know lots about him. It could be good business. I think he's been quoted at like less than £30 million. I just don't know enough about him, to be honest. So I'm just going to put him risky. And that is not because I don't know if it'd be a risky signing because he wouldn't cost that much. I've not watched him play that much. Now, this is where it's going to get a little bit on the controversial side. Skamaka. I've watched him play about 5 times, but every time I watch this guy play, I like him. I think he's a technically gifted striker. I think he just offers so much. He's linked to Arsenal. I hope he doesn't go to Arsenal. He'd be less than 50 million quid. I think he could do a job. Now, to be fair, I'd still probably get Nkunku over him this season because I just don't think striker's the biggest priority in the world, but we do need someone to take the pressure off Ronaldo. But I do really like Skamaka. And to be fair, he should probably go in top business. He should probably go in top business. And we're going to put, good business. He shouldn't be in top drawer. He should go in good business. So I'm going to pull him down a level and I'm going to put him in good business, okay? Because I think top drawer is a bit, when I look at the ones in good business, is he really that much above them? No. But I do really like Skamaka and I would put him in good business. For me, Skamaka goes in good business. Hakim Ziyech. Okay. Hakim Ziyech next. If you want my honest opinion, how do I feel about Hakim Ziyech? He supports Man United and was brilliant under Ten Hag. He's left-footed and we need a right winger. The only problem is Hakim and Bruno in the same team, hero balling, keeping possession. Is that going to work? I don't know. Now, I think Chelsea with Ousmane Dembele, Chelsea bound, you could get Hakim Ziyech for under £20 million. And Hakim Ziyech, right winger, sorted, 15-20 million pounds. That is good business, but he's not been brilliant at Chelsea. He's got injury problems, and I think you have to stick him in risky. Same with Kante. He's kind of finished at Chelsea. He's not as good as he used to be. He's a class player, but it's like replacing Matic with Matic. The thing about Kante is when he plays once a week, he can be good, but he's not always good. But when Kante's good, he can control and dictate a game. We've had maybe 8 games this season when the Manu Matic has been brilliant, another 6 games where he's been decent, and all the other games he's knackered and you have to take him off at the 60th minute. Kante is just a slightly refreshed version of Matic. Won't be able to play week in, week out, will get tired legs. I don't mind Kante. He's a good player. He will do a job for us, but it's replacing Matic with Matic. Let's go and get a young up-and-coming CDM. Tyrone Martinez, again, risky. Now, actually, I do think he's a really good striker. You could put him in good business if Skamaka is in good business, but he's going to be, again, quite expensive, although I don't think he has long left on his Inter contract. But I'll put him in risky again there. He's used to playing in a front 2. Ten Hag's going to play one striker and wingers. He's going to do a 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3. So I'll put him in risky. And everyone's like, why are you just putting every single player in risky? Because, well, a lot of transfers haven't paid off for United and we overpay for a lot of players. I just think he's a good player. Risky doesn't mean bad. I think we could sign, Hedera and he'd be brilliant. I think we could sign Pau Torres and he'd be brilliant. There's a lot of players Arsenal signed that I thought were risky that have really, really paid off, like Odegaard. So, he's just in risky. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Martinez, again, I'm going to put him in. I could put him in Mare, but I do think 25 million for Martinez is good business, but I would rather get Timber. We only need one centre-back, and I think Timber's my first. But again, decent centre-back, knows Ten Hag's way, and because he's at Ajax, he's not going to be more than 30 million. So I think you've got to put it in good business. But it's not the most exciting signing, to be fair. It's not risky at all, but it's just not the most exciting signing. So you could put it in there, to be fair. De Ligt is an interesting one. It is an interesting one because I think you could look at De Ligt and go good business, knows Ten Hag's way. Just depends how much it costs, because if it's expensive, it's in risky because it's a centre-back. We shouldn't be spending more than 50 million on a player that's not a midfielder. But I think you've got to put De Ligt in good business purely because he knows Ten Hag's way. Dybala, for me, is a meh. Or you could put him in risky. I don't want Dybala. I don't. I think he's the kind of signing we need to avoid. He almost came to us 3 seasons ago and we pulled the plug on him because it was obvious he wanted to come for the money. We have issues in our dressing room. We have wage structure issues because of what Mark Judge and Woodward had done. They kept players like Bailly and Phil Jones at United, gave them new contracts, even though we weren't planning on playing them, just because they wanted to increase their resale value. We've now had problems in the dressing room with players on high wages that we can't sell because their wages are high. Players in the past, Falcao came here for the money, Di Maria came here for the money. We weren't in the top 4. We've had a lot of players that have come in for the money and come from big clubs and come in for the money, and it's not worked. Dybala he's been good at Juventus, but he's not been brilliant. He's not a player that you look and you go, that's what United need. A few years ago, I'd have loved Paulo Dybala, but I actually think he's like a James Rodriguez, where he's a good player, but he's just not quite lived up to it. So people are going to call me crazy. I would put him in there, but he is a top player, so I'm going to put him in risky as well. Spence. Now, you could put Spence in there. He's a championship player. It's not the most exciting. He's an inverted fullback. Does he work in Ten Hag's system? Risky again because he's a championship player. Or you could put him in good business because, again, he'd be 15 million. You trade Wan-Bissaka for Spence, bish, bash, bosh. I'm going to put him in there because he's a championship player. And I'd be happy. Actually, no, I'll put him in risky. I'll put him in risky like every player. I'm just fed up of putting so many players in risky. I really am. But I'll put him in risky because I think it could be I don't know enough about him. I think he needs a year in the Premier League, but top clubs are looking at him. He's a young up-and-coming fullback. I don't know if we should be looking at someone in the Championship, but then I have just said we should be looking at people United to step up. So I'll put him in risky, but I'm fed up of putting so many players in risky. This is Hugo Etta Kay. You could put him in meh. He's not played that many first team minutes, but he's a very young player, very exciting. I think really you put him in risky. But then he's been quoted at £50 million for a player that's played, 10 games worth of first team minutes. I'm going to put him in there for now. However, it does contradict what I've been saying because he could be a striker that plays in Europa League games, plays in the cup games, and we give him a year to develop. And then when Ronaldo leaves, he could be a top player. So if I could be honest, I'll put him in risky. I'll put him in risky because if you actually think of the long-term plan, he could be a good backup for Ronaldo. You merge him in the Cup and the Europa League games, and then maybe next year he's more experienced and he could be that striker again. So I will put him in risky. Now, if this is a player that is going to go all the way up to top drawer, Frenkie de Jong, it is not a risk, okay? This is Ten Hag's 100% signing. This is the player he wants. This is a top-class player. This is a player that's going to add so much to Manchester United. He's everything we need. Now, Frenkie de Jong is only a risk if you buy Frenkie de Jong and not a single midfielder, and you think that just buying Frenkie de Jong completes the midfield. It doesn't. My fear is we buy Frenkie de Jong, we think that's the midfield sorted, we don't sign another midfielder. You stick Frenkie de Jong with McTominay, de Jong will then not work. If you play de Jong and McTominay in the same team, it won't work. We need to buy de Jong, but we also need to buy a midfielder to complement de Jong and build a team around de Jong. If we just buy de Jong and think that's the midfield sorted, then he goes right and risky because he's expensive. But if you buy de Jong and you build a team around de Jong, he will work. We saw him for the Netherlands the other day, brilliant. He was brilliant under Ten Hag. He's a top-class player. He's a midfielder, priority position. What he brings is something that Fred and McTominay will never bring. He doesn't hide from the ball. He doesn't shy away from the ball. He's a brilliant ball progressor. He can get the ball from defence to attack quickly. He can control a midfield. He's exactly what we're lacking in midfield. He's an absolutely brilliant player, but we've got to build a team around him. Let's get a Lema. Let's get a Sangare. Let's get someone to partner him. And my fingers are crossed that the only reason we're not linked with CDM is because we're going to wait and see if we can get de Jong or not before we get CDM. I think it's get de Jong and get a midfielder to partner de Jong. I think that's why we haven't gone for a Ruben Neves, because does Neves partner de Jong? So for me, Frenkie de Jong is my dream signing. I think he is the player that you spend 60+ million on, then you build a team around him, then you go for your Timbers, then you go for maybe a Sangare to complement him, then you maybe go for a Malacia at fullback, maybe you go for a Spence, I don't know, maybe you go for an Nkunku afterwards, who would be another big signing. But for me, Frenkie de Jong goes in top drawer. Sangare, again, it goes in good business. I think for me, he'd be brilliant to partner Frenkie de Jong. I think they complement each other well, and I don't think he'd be more than £30 million. If we spent 90 million on de Jong and Sangare, I'd be very happy with that. I think that would be the midfield sorted, especially with Donny coming back, with James Garner coming back as well. I wouldn't be worried about the midfield if we had de Jong and Sangare. Same with Lema. I think I'd put Lema in good business. He's got 1 year left. He's going to leave RB Leipzig, 20 million euros. I know he's not an out-and-out CDM, and de Jong could be the Pogba replacement, and maybe we need a 6 of a Matic replacement. But if Ten Hag is going to play a 4-2-3-1, which is what I believe he will play, he seems to play a 4-2-3-1 most of the time. You don't need an out-and-out 6. Now, I think an out-and-out 6 is a priority for playing a 4-3-3, but if you have a Frenkie de Jong and a Lema or Frenkie de Jong and a Sangare, I think they just complement each other well in the pivot, and you don't need one of them to be an out-and-out box player as long as you have two pivot players that complement each other quite well. I think Eriksen, some people will put Eriksen in meh. Some people will put him in risky because he was standing out at Brentford. But if you stand out at Brentford, can you stand out at United? But then when you think he's a free transfer, surely it's good business. Mata's gone, Bruno back up. Surely it's good business. Now, I don't care if we get Eriksen or not. Whereas if we signed one of these players in good business, I'd be quite happy. If we signed Eriksen, I'd be like, cool, whatever. It is a bit of a mess signing because he's not going to come in and he's not going to be a regular starter. But not all of these players are. But I just think because he's 3, you just got to put him in good business. And Dika, again, I think would be quite good business if we couldn't get Tim, but I think he's a good, cheap centre-back. I rate Dika. Enzo Fernandez, you could put him risky because he's not played in a top 5 league. But again, I think Enzo Fernandez, he's a CDM, he's a priority position. You could very easily put Enzo Fernandez in good business. If you're paying less than 20 million for a CDM and he's young, he's up and coming, he looks really, really good when I've seen him play. And I would have really wanted Julian Alvarez. I would have put Julian Alvarez in good business. So I'm going to be generous to Enzo Fernandez and put him in good business. But I can see why anyone would put him in risky. Tyrone Malacia, again, for me, the last one, because we've already put Spence in there, he's just at the bottom. I would put in good business. He's been quoted at £15 million. Again, I've not seen him play that much, which is why it could be risky. But his pace is something that I think we needed in the defence. He looks levels above our fullbacks. He's very young. Ten Hag's watched him, he admires him. Ten Hag knows all about him, but he was so good for Fenerbahce in that Conference League final that I'd be a massive fan of him coming in. Honestly, I would. I mean, let me know your thoughts on the tier list. Let me know what you change. This is the tier list here. Let me go to full screen. Let me go to full screen so you can see it. De Jong in top drawer. Timber, Basuma, Anthony Nkunku, Skamaka, Martinez, De Ligt, Sangare, Lema, Eriksen, Ndika, Enzo Fernandez, and Malacia, I think would be good business because none of them are stupidly overpriced. And Ten Hag's quite aware of all of these players and has worked with a lot of these players in the past. In risky, which are players that I'd be happy if we signed. Like I wouldn't be annoyed if we signed them, but I think it would be a risk. Is Ziyech because I think he could be a really good signing, but injury problems could be a risk. Tammy Abraham, you've got obviously Rafinha, Tielemans, Neves, Phillips, Savic, Pau Torres, Nunes, Danjuma, Elise, Hedera, Kante, Lautaro Martinez, Dybala, Spence, and Etta Kay are in risky. In meh is Ivan Toney and Richarlison, and just no is Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And I'd just be really pissed off if we signed him. I don't rate him. Costs too much. Obviously, Isaac, Kane, and Rice, and then obviously the players are already gone because they're basically already gone, and some of them already are. So that is my tier list. Let me know what you changed down below. You're bound to disagree on some of these, and there's a lot of players. Meh, risky, and good business. Those 3 categories are really hard because there's a few players in risky that I could put in there. I'm not that bothered about them, but then I'm like, they could really pay off, but then Ivan Toney could pay off as well. There's a few players in good business that I think could be risky as well because they could be a little bit more expensive. And there's players in risky that I think I would actually be happy signing, and some players in risky but I don't think are the right signing, but I could be wrong, and they could be the right signing. Smash your like, subscribe down below. I will be live later tonight on all the latest transfer news. So thank you everybody for tuning into today's video. Bish, bash, bosh. Smash that like button. And yeah, I might do a part 2 to this tier list. So let me know what you think. Bye.